though we just finished up an adult mayfly, I felt the need to show you just one more version of a mayfly that I like to use. And this particular one is called a Compara May. Compara May basically means it's kind of half of a dun pattern and half of a Comparadun pattern. Now as you can see, we have no hackle on the underside with all the hackle on top. Thus the reason for the name Compara. Let me show you how I do this. Again, we're going to start off with just your basic dry fly hook, but with the ring eye. And just like the previous adult pattern, we're going to get our thread on here, tie in our tails, and split them up. Again, we're going to use 4 of the fibers of the microfibbets. I'm going to hold them up there so they're the length of the hook shank. And we just wrap our thread back. Kind of flip them up there and spread them out so I can grab a hold of them and spread them into 2 equal groups. And we just do a figure 8 through them. That way they're never going to come back together. Again, for the body, we're going to use a goose biot. Last time we were using it for a pale morning dun. This time we're going to go for a blue-winged olive. Blue-winged olive has a little more of an olive dunish tone to it, so we're going to use an olive biot. Here again, we're going to have to moisten it. So instead of taking the time to soak it in some water, I'll just stick it in my mouth. I'm going to tie it in by the tip. And as I did that, I made sure that that little notch was to my left so I have a nice smooth body and segmentation. One thing I didn't mention on the previous flight, right before you attach your hackle pliers, you want to make sure that your biot is gently pulled to the side towards you. That way you have one wrap already and you're not quite as likely to break it off when you attach your hackle pliers. So we attach the hackle pliers. Again, just wrap it forward, covering up the fuzzy little ribs if you have it, up to the thorax area. Even though this is a pretty good sized hook, that goose biot was pretty darn long when it comes to goose biots. And that's just because they've been hand selected and actually hand dyed to match specific hatches like the blue-winged olive. Once we're into the thorax area, we're going to go right back to where if this were a nymph, we'd tie in our wing case. Here we're going to be tying in our hackle. For our hackle, we're going to use one of Whiting's blue-winged olive colored hackles, or saddles I should say. And we just cut it to length, strip off some fibers, and tie it in by the tip. Make sure that's tied in. And about in the middle of the thorax or slightly backwards, instead of just using the hackle for a wing like a standard Comparadun, we're going to put some actual wings in here. For the wings, once again, we're going to use a hen neck. And Whiting hen necks is what I prefer just because of how round the tips are here. I like my wings to be fairly full, so I'll grab a couple that are pretty big here. Well, there's one. Didn't quite get the other one there. And we grab 2. Again, we're going to put them this shiny side together just so they splay out. And again, we're going to hold them up to the hook shank. And we're going to want them to be the length of the hook shank, so I just hold them at that length and I just trim them at the hook eye. Then we just take out and remove some of the loose fibers, and we're ready to mount our wings in here. Just tie them on there, and we'll stand them up, take a couple turns of thread behind them, and we're going to do a series of figure eights right through them just so we know that they stay splayed out, and that way when this thing happens to float over a fish, the fish can see the wing silhouette from the underside. What we're going to do next is build up a little thorax with some dubbing. And just like the PMD, the micro dry fly dubbing also comes in a blue-winged olive color. So we'll add a little bit of dubbing to our thread here. Again, you just want to make sure that you're always twisting the same direction when you add dubbing. Get a little dubbing going here. And we're going to begin by wrapping behind the wing. And as we get up here, we're going to do one figure eight through the wing and continue forward. Now we've built up our thorax and our wings have been separated. Now we're ready to wrap our hackle forward. So we just start wrapping the hackle. And as we do that, we're doing it one right in front of the other so it's nice and dense. And we do it until we get it up right behind the wings. Then we come right in front of the wings and continue on. Add several more wraps of the hackle. And I'm going to stop. And at the stopping point, you notice I have some more room up at the hook eye. And we'll get to that in a minute for that reason. So we're going to tie down our hackle. Make sure it's tied down good, and we're going to take off that excess. Now to continue to make this a Comparadun kind of style fly, what we're going to do is just kind of take the fibers from the underside of the fly, kind of separate them into two groups a little bit. Just kind of brush up with your fingers. And now we're going to add some dubbing. We just add a little bit of dubbing to our thread here. And we don't need a whole lot for what we're about ready to do. That ought to just about do it right there. If we need some more, we can always add it. We want to push that dubbing so it's up tight against the hook shank. And just to make sure it is up tight, we'll pull the hackle back a little bit. And we'll take a couple turns. Alright, we're up to the dubbing. Now here's where the fun part starts. We're going to take the kind of pinch the hackle from the underside on the half towards you, come underneath the fly, wrap behind it, and then we're going to grab the other half of the hackle and come forward. Take a turn at the hook eye, and we're going to repeat that process again. And what this is doing is pulling all the hackle fibers from the underside and just kind of making them stick out like legs directly out of the thorax like a Comparadun. Now that we're all done, our head's pretty good there, so we can leave that alone. We're ready to finish this thing off. Pull our fibers out of the way so we can do some whip finishing. And we're ready to take that thread off. Now, what you want to do is with your rotary vise, something like what HMH has here, is kind of turn it to to the underside, and if you have some fibers underneath here, you just come in here and snip out those extra. Just snip those extras out of there. Now you have no more fibers underneath there. And as you turn it back up to the top, you have all the hackle on the top, nothing on the bottom, and there you have it. You have a Comparadun. The only difference with this one is it comes complete with wings.